Just wait another minute or so for everyone to file in here. Thank you for responding so far to where you're located. Looks like mainly from Ontario so far. All right, I'll go ahead and end that poll. Thank you so much for answering that. And then, of course, we always like to, here, I'll just share those results. So mainly from Ontario and somebody from Quebec. So thank you so much for joining us. We'll just ask you a second question. Let us know what occupation you're in, so we just know who's in the audience today. Oh, lots of builders and developers. Excellent. Love to see that. And then in the other, just let us know in the chat what your occupation is if your particular occupation is not listed. All right, so it looks like we have representation from the building community as well as some utilities, and let's see who said manufacturer. Oh, excellent. And a bookkeeper. Excellent. Architect. All right, I'll go ahead and end that poll and share the results so you can see. We have some different audiences today. So excellent. So my name is Stefanie Coleman. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm the Marketing and Business Development Manager with Building Knowledge. And today it is Gord and I, and Gord is going to be talking to us about sales, a subject that he's very passionate about. And so we're very pleased to have you for this final of our monthly webinar series that is sponsored by Enbridge. So before we get started, just the typical housekeeping that I do every time, just to let you know, when you have any sort of questions that you'd like to ask Gord or myself, just put those in the Q&A function, because the chat, I find questions sometimes get lost in the scroll. So use the Q&A function for any sort of questions that you may have of us. And if you have just some general comments or whatever you want to say, just put those particular general comments in the chat. Otherwise, we will get started. So of course, we want to thank Enbridge and for their continued sponsorship for our industry. They do a fantastic job of encouraging education of the construction industry. And this is one of those programs that they've been very generous in sponsoring. And just as a hint, the topics have not been announced yet, but we will be continuing this program into next year. So that will be announced at a little bit of a later date. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And Gord, I'm going to hand the mic over to you.
Thanks so much, Steph. And I'll share my screen. And thanks to all for joining. Let me just make sure. Can you see that all right?
Yeah, looks great.
Thanks all for joining. I see lots of really good familiar names on there. My own personal sales hero, she's wonderful. Susie Dennis from Doug Terry Homes is there, and I see Phil Capuano from Chatsworth. So thanks very much, guys, for joining. I also noticed Sonia is there from CHBA. Sonia, I only stole a couple of slides from the CHBA Net Zero program. So you go, a bit of a plug, I guess. You guys do need to know that CHBA has created this really cool for the Net Zero Home Program, a training session that I am very pleased, and Steph, you've been pleased to present as well. Mm-hmm. This is sort of a subset of that, I would say, just a little conversation. See, I always like end of year from a salesperson, as I've been doing sales for 35, 40 years, and I always like the end of the year to kind of take stock, how did I make out, and think about what should I be keying in on and in the following year, what might be happening in my market, in the products that I'm selling, or in the marketplace in general, that might impact and maybe change up. And it gives you an opportunity at the start of the year. It's a good excuse to kind of rejig, renew, and say, hey, am I gonna move forward on some new pathways? And we do have some very compelling things happening in the industry. You know, even myself in the last 6 months, literally the last 6 months, I've come to realize that I'm a little outdated on the way I've been talking about high performance, zero energy housing, or this doesn't necessarily have to be zero energy, but on high performance housing. And I'll share that with you a little bit today. Stefanie, you and I were talking today and just your own journey, and I'm going to ask you chime in on that, your own journey of buying a new home in the last couple of years,
Mhm.
and what that might have meant to you. So very pleased to be here. I know it's a relatively small group. That means by all means ask questions. Stephanie's really good at monitoring the chat. And if you have a burning question, by all means type it in. She'll know to break in and interrupt me. And at the end, of course, we have a time for discussion as well. But it's a smaller group. This is, normally on this, it's a technical conversation. This group, I imagine, is the techie folks who actually want to make money at being techie. They actually want to know how to sell this stuff. So that's how we're going to work on this today. Here's the thoughts that I have, the topics that I'd like to cover today. One, from a sales perspective, what's new in 22? That's what I want us to rethink, maybe rejig our sales presentation. I've said to you, I feel I need to rejig the way I talk about things. And then I want us to just put into context the excitement and the challenge of the new home buying experience. I want to put it from the perspective of the customer, and I'm going to ask Stefanie to play that part for us over the next little bit. And then I want to go right back to basics of finding a sales process that works specifically for new homes and specifically for builders who are trying to sell, I'll call it high performance housing, not builders who are building to minimum code and maybe have, I'm going to say, other aspects of their houses that they want to sell. I want to work on a sales process that works specifically for what I'll call high performance builders. And I'm going to use the phrase of, building trust, that how do we help people understand that we're not the normal home builder, we're actually a more trustworthy, higher performance, higher quality builder. That's what we want to work on. And then I always like to spend a few minutes on some tips and techniques for translating the benefits of the value of the houses that you build. And as I mentioned, time for questions. So the first conversation that we want to talk about is, what is new in 2022 that might be of interest. But Stefanie, I'm gonna ask and start with you and say, this wasn't you. I know you're a single mom, but Alex is a little older than that, but than this little one. But I wanted to ask you, when you first thought about buying a home, how did your journey start on that one?
Mm-hmm. So, I was 2 years ago, actually, was when I had actually, I guess it has actually been more like 3 when I actually signed the paperwork. But I was temporarily in a rental home and was looking to purchase a home. And so I started by starting with the existing housing stock. Actually, I found a house and I was thinking to myself, okay, what are my needs? I've got a son who at the time was 15, now he's 17. And, I understand he's not going to be living at home forever, or maybe, I don't know, who knows, he might be. Time will tell. But I was thinking about that. And then also kind of long-term, what my needs would be long-term. And so I was looking for a little bungalow. So the first thing in that journey was looking for a house that, number one, was fitting with the lifestyle that I needed for my son, my little family, my son and myself now, and then into the future. And then also, what could I afford? Those were kind of the top first 2 things. And then from there, I got into more of the fine tuning of it. What did I want that home to look like and that sort of thing.
But I want to be really clear. Here's a very well-educated woman who's in the housing industry, was president of the Home Builders Association, who's done a big study of zero energy, net zero housing and construction. And you're telling me that wasn't the number one thing on your list? It was to buy an energy efficient home?
It was up near the top. However, the very first thing I had to do was to find a home that, number one, met my needs, and then number 2, that I could afford, because it would be nice to want to have the perfect house, but if I couldn't actually afford it, then I couldn't have it, right? So the first 2 things were what met my needs and what I could afford.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And everybody on this call, well, not everybody, but folks that I've talked to, we all recognize that the high performance stuff is not out front. The high performance stuff's in the background. It's all the nice to haves, at least at this point, and it comes down in tier 3, maybe tier 4. It's not the first conversation you have. It's not you're putting out your hand and say, hi, I'm a high performance builder, or I'm a zero energy builder. It's no, welcome to how can I help you meet your needs. And I want to use that theme in this particular slide, what's new in 2022. And I will say to you, in 2022, we're going to have to recognize the fact now we're going to be 2 years into this new lifestyle, and And there's going to be a lot of people thinking, I wonder if this is the new normal. I wonder if that my housing needs, I really need to entrench and think about how my life is going to look going forward. And kinds of things like cocooning and making sure air quality. And what about the next pandemic? And what about wildfires if you're out in BC? And taking all of the things that were good, if you will, about the pandemic. I shouldn't say it that way, I guess, because it's been tragic for so many families. But to understand how we changed our lifestyle and think, could I embrace that, endorse that, and actually use that as part of our sales conversation to help people understand that there may be things in high performance houses that are better for this new lifestyle, this new normal, if you will. Second, I think you guys are going to know there's going to be some angst over inflation and presumably therefore interest rates. We've been able to dine out on the fact that interest rates have been so darn low, and now we're going to see potentially a doubling of interest rates. It's still a fairly historically low rate, 4 or 5%, but it will be more, and that's going to be on people's minds. And you go, well, that's a negative. I don't want to bring that up. I'm not necessarily sure it's going to be a negative. We're just going to have to find a way to incorporate that into the decision making, because houses, interestingly enough, are an odd decision. I often use this. You go to buy a big screen TV, you think a lot about the emotion, the pixels, the beautiful size of it, the beautiful color. You don't think a lot about the investment quality. That is, what's the resale going to be? When you buy an investment like stocks or bonds, you don't think a lot about the emotion of that product. You think about, the nuts and bolts, what's it's going to mean. Houses are a very odd mix of emotion versus investment, lifestyle versus investment. You look at a house and you go, what a beautiful kitchen. Oh, this is great. It's near the schools. It's all wonderful. And just then your mind is going, but is it a good time to buy? Interest rates are going to be going up. I wonder am I going to regret this decision? This odd emotion versus investment, I think, is really important for us to understand. And when we greet somebody at the house, we need to understand we're looking at two people in this picture, not one. That is, the buyer is actually two different personalities. One thing about the emotion and the excitement of buying a house, the other thing about investment quality and the economics of it. And you expressed that really nicely, Stefanie, that looking for a home that would improve your life going forward, but also making sure, did I make a good investment? I think is a really powerful one.
Well, and actually on that point, so to your point, the third in importance for me was that net zero or net zero ready. And a large part of that was not only because I knew all the benefits of the comfort and the health and the indoor air quality and all the less dust and all these wonderful full benefits, but it was kind of the future proofing my investment, knowing that my house was 12 years ahead of its time.
Right.
Was huge.
And then we need to lay on top of that this whole affordability crunch and people wondering, when's it going to end? I know there's lots of people sitting on the sidelines going, well, surely the prices are going to fall at some point. And then they go to jump in. And when they go to jump in, they get into this volatile resale market. And I'm going to suggest this might be one of the biggest sales advantages you have in 2022. Because, Stefanie, tell the story. You said you found a resale house that you thought might fit, and what happened?
Yeah, so it was a bungalow. Now, as a renovator for 15 years, I knew that it was going to need a lot of improvement. So I was going to have to invest at least 150, if not more, into it for a renovation. And I put in the offer, and somebody outbid me, and I ended up losing it to somebody that outbid me. Yeah.
And here we have this rather historic point. It's happened a couple of times. It happened in the 80s, but here we've had about 3-4 years of this bidding war going on, which creates not one, but two uncertainties for clients. One, the uncertainty of, am I going to get it? Am I going to get it? Our young colleague here in our office, Scott, put in offers 6 different times, and 6 different times he was disappointed. And each time they're wondering, should I be in? Should I be out? They're worrying about their lifestyle. Am I ever going to get along the way to get into the housing market? But then the second risk, that is that he puts in a bid, a high bid on a house, and he has to take off the conditions. He can't put in a bid that says, hey, I want to have a home inspection done. So here's a young couple that's buying a house basically sight unseen, if you will. Of course, they've seen it, but they have to make that decision. And there's, from a new housing perspective, This alone is tremendous opportunity for you guys. The cost certainty. Forget the cost, because cost is an interesting one. There's two aspects to the cost. What is the cost? And then the second is the uncertainty of that cost and the uncertainty of that investment. And out of this call today, you get to remind yourself for 2022, we need to start using that. Yes, your house prices do go up. I understand that, but not like in existing houses where you just don't know from day to day what the price is going to be. So I see this as finding a way to use this in 2022 as part of your sales presentations to say to somebody, the good news is we're a professional builder, we know our costs, and here's what your cost is going to be. And after you move in, you don't have to start making repairs and bring your house up to code. Any dollars you spend on your house is actually personalizing it for you, rather than trying to fix old problems that the other homeowner made. You get to make the house your own and add to the investment, as opposed to just bringing it up to snuff, bringing it up to code. I think is very powerful. And then lastly, we don't want to dismiss. Obviously, I'm an energy efficient guy, been doing it for 35 years, and hopefully you'll understand there's some new urgency. In speaking to homeowners, family members, friends, there is this angst as, what is our climate change commitment? What am I going to do personally? It was on CBC News this morning as I was driving in or driving over in this little call-in show about what can I do personally? What can I do? It's no longer just, hey, I'll put the recycle in the blue box. I have to do something more. And there's going to be, you notice all of the commitment that Canada's made over the next, certainly in 2022, you do have the ability to talk about climate change and what a new house can do for them. Because think about that old house. What can I do with that? A new house, I want to show you some stats that will tell you, wow, new houses have a tremendous advantage with one measure, one signing of a check, if you will. They can make their commitment to climate change by buying a new house. So hopefully that's useful to you. I thought it was as I got thinking about this session, and Stefanie and I were talking about, wow, you got some really good stuff to talk about in 2022 to adjust your sales pitch. So that's item number one. I see there's some items in the chat. Steph, you'll let me know if there's any questions that need to get answered if people want to comment. But that was kind of my first little piece, is readjust or tune up your sales presentations for 2022 to keep these elements in mind. They will have access to a copy of the presentation, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that's right. And in addition to that, the recording. And actually what happened was, and what you were seeing in the chat there, is a question had come in. And so I asked Sonia if she would be interested in chiming in. So the question is, high performance homes, when it comes time for financing or selling, should they not be appraised at a higher value? Now, I've given Sonia the opportunity to speak. Sonia, are you there? You're there. Yeah. Now I know that CHBA, so Sonia works, is the director for the Net Zero Council and the committee. And so I know you've been doing some work on this front.
Yeah, we, through our Net Zero Reno initiative, we worked directly with the Appraisal Institute of Canada, and actually first connected with the Appraisal Institute in the US because we wanted to see if we could take the what they have in the US called the Green and Energy Efficient Addendum, which appraisers have been using in the US for, I think, about 5+ years now. And so we were able to get approval from both the US and the Canadian Appraisal Institutes to essentially Canadianize it. And then we piloted that Canadian version with a couple of homes through the Reno initiative. The results did not come back as we were hoping they would. And so we are planning on continuing this work to get a larger data set through the next Net Zero Reno initiative that will be running, which will be between 100 to 150 homes across Canada, because I think 1 to 2 homes doesn't really give us, any real statistical relevance. But we do plan on reconnecting with the Appraisal Institute of Canada to do that work. And so I hope we'll be able to share some better news when we finish that up in the next couple of years.
And so does it have relevance on the new housing side though, Sonia?
I would think that would be easier to, because it gets appraised once the house is completed, right before it's occupied through the banks. We don't actually have any data on new homes. I would think yes, because you've got usually appliances that are more energy efficient, lighting that is LED. Like if I'm thinking just of the net zero homes, usually you have upgraded mechanical systems. The challenge, of course, is that what I've been told, a lot of it has to do with perception. So if a homeowner doesn't perceive the extra insulation and the extra air tightness on the home to be valuable, or the results of that, which would be lower energy bills, then the appraisers don't typically have the right information to be able to give it the value. So that's what we're working on, is that we need to find the actual, I'm just trying to think of the word behind it, the calculations that happen behind the scenes that the appraisers use to do this. And so that's what we need to do more of. So I don't unfortunately have a good answer for that. I would think yes, but that's not the result we got when we tested it out on a couple of the resale homes.
So if I could add a little context to that, because I was involved in this in the US, and the way the appraisal industry is supposed to work, the theory is you have two ways to do appraisal. One is on comparables, that is what was sold in the neighborhood and so on. And the other is by what's called first principles. And I did a presentation to the Canadian Appraisal Institute some time ago on exactly this, and they assured me that yes, it was entirely possible. You could ask for somebody to do a first principles appraisal. The good news is on new housing, you have that. You have your cost structure. You can show your bills if you're willing to share. In the US, what started to happen is you couldn't ask for a specific appraiser, but you could ask for an appraiser who had the capabilities to do a first principles appraisal and who had background in green. So builders, if you were struggling in a particular market to have the local banks or local appraiser give you full value, or give your clients full value, you have the right to go back to the bank and say, I need an appraiser with specific qualifications who's able to look at my cost structures, obviously on a confidential basis. So just something you want to pursue. So thanks for a good line of questioning, kind of an interesting one. We would imagine that over the next few years, we will see greater value in those high performance houses. But hopefully this slide's of interest, and I'm encouraging you to sit down over the holidays, for example, and think about what would I do differently in my sales presentations when I have these 5 bullet points in the back of my mind. Are there presentations? And I'll try to allude to that just a little bit as we move through the presentation. So thanks, Sonia, for piping in. I really appreciate that. And then I always like to make the case, and I kind of alluded to this on the emotion versus the investment side. In terms of when we buy anything, frankly, we need to remind ourselves that people buy on emotion. Always they buy on emotion. There's been lots of studies on this. I've reported on this before. We all imagine that we're good logical beings. We're going to make good logical decisions. And it turns out the logical side of the brain really doesn't make decisions. The logical side of the brain is a resource for the emotional side of the brain. The logical side of the brain has a veto right. It's able to say, no, we can't do that right now. We can't afford it. But the buying decision is actually made on the emotional side of the brain. And this is even more important in housing. And what we need to be mindful of, that the emotional side of the brain decides they want to buy the house. The logical side of the brain is then given an assignment by the emotional side of the brain that says, give me 3 or 4 reasons why it's okay for us to buy this house. That's what's happening. If you look at late night TV, the George Foreman grill, the Ginzu knives, when you're laughing, Steph, but it's actually true. They've studied brain theory, and what they know is the logical side of the brain needs to hear not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 reasons why it's okay to pick up the phone or click buy on the internet right now. And so keep that in mind when we start thinking about high performance. Oh, emotionally, I can sell them on high performance elements, but then I'm going to have 2 or 3 or 4 facts for them in order to make that decision, and build that into whatever presentation you're giving. It's not good enough to say to people, oh, this will save you money, because that's just one. And you have to think about what else could it do for them. What's another reason, another fact, another logic piece that would help me make that emotional decision. And then the last piece is, it turns out, because we're not very good and we don't really understand housing, where nobody's really qualified to buy a new house, it would take far too long. It turns out people buy from people they trust. So to a large extent, this was a great survey done years and years ago by CHBA, the renovation division of CHBA, at least I think it was. It might have been OHBA's renovation decision. And they asked people before they were doing a renovation, what are you going to choose? What kind of renovation are you going to choose? I'm looking for quality. I'm looking for somebody with that does really good quality work, that's affordable. Those were the two big things, quality and affordability. After the fact, they asked them, so why did you choose the renovator that you chose? And the answer was, well, they have a good reputation. I talked to a friend who's also used them. And it turns out they substituted the word quality, or substitute the reputation or the trust for the word quality. They didn't really know what quality was. Is it high baseboards? Is it, fine workmanship? And they ended up substituting trust words versus quality words, because they really don't know how to define quality. So these are key elements in our sales presentation of high performance. To understand, I have to find the emotion first, then I have to present the facts. And why am I presenting the facts? To build the trust. That's why I'm presenting facts. They don't really need to know that you're using a low E 272 glass. What they need to know is you knew those numbers of what that glass was, and therefore you're a trustworthy person to buy from. You're always thinking about building trust is really what's happening in this slide. And then I do like to say, I always like to show my grandkids at this point. Thinking about what do they expect from that new home buying experience. And I always like to put this into play. When they walk into a model home, how do they expect that it's going to go? My son has bought, this particular son, Andrew, he's bought two houses from two builders in his time. Both of those houses he bought on one visit to one builder. He didn't shop around. Of course, most of his shopping around was online. By the time he got to the house, he bought from each builder from one visit. And it was interesting to me to ask him how he went about it. And his immediate thought was, he did the research online, and he and Sarah were going to go out to that house. They were going to go to 3 or 4 houses in an afternoon. They were going to pick up all the information. Then they were going to come home and make a decision. And that was his understanding of how you bought a house. Go gather the information, come back and make the decision. It surprised even him that, in fact, he made a decision after visiting one builder. Only ever got to one builder and made the decision right away. Why? Because the new home sales agent was able to take his understanding of the new home buying procedure and had them understand that, boy, there's a better way to buy a new house. You don't necessarily need to go and waste your afternoon looking at 5 or 6 different builders and trying to sort out who's best, as long as we have the right buying process. Throughout that concept, though, I do want to ask you, and you won't be able to answer, I guess, but I do like to ask, do clients want to be educated? And I normally get, if I'm doing an in-person session, I get, well, yeah, I guess they do. Susie, you and I have talked about this a lot. Do they want to be educated? And I think we'd all agree. They kind of want to be educated, but they don't want the 8-hour lecture. They don't want the 4-hour seminar. They don't even want the 2-hour workshop. They want to be educated in about, well, it turns out 7 to 11 minutes. The research has been done. Let's be really clear. If really, really good at it, you have 7 to 11 minutes to convince somebody to buy a high-performance home. They're going to buy the house because it's on the right street, the right area, and so on, the location, all of those good things. But in terms of the actual performance elements of the house, if you're really good, you've got 7 to 11 minutes. Most of us, mere mortals, only have 3 to 5 minutes. It's about as much as we can really get done. So they want to be educated, but at 3 to 5 minutes. And so we have to keep that in mind if we're going to sell high-performance houses. In fact, one of the top sales trainers, I think he's retired now, but his company lives on, Bob Schultz out of Florida, worked with all the large builders in the United States. He made all sales agents do a 5-minute drill, a 5-minute script. You weren't allowed on the sales floor in the model home until you could give a 5-minute script of 5 performance elements. 1 minute each. You had to be able to show 5 performance elements of a house before and talk about them all for 1 minute over a 5-minute period. So pretty powerful when you think about, if I want to sell high performance, I'm going to have to get to that level to be that good with my words in order to be able to sell high performance. And when you think about it, 5 minutes isn't bad. If I can add value, if I'm a high performance builder and I'm selling, I'll use net zero, and I command a premium of $10,000 to $20,000 for a net zero ready home. If my sales agent spent an extra 5 minutes with each client, would that be a good investment? And the answer would be, of course, that'd be a great investment. And if I said to you, every builder on this call could sell net zero ready homes, if all sales agents simply committed to understanding and being able to give a compelling 5-minute speech, you'd all go, done. I want to do that. And in fact, we can help with that. This is something that we've helped with across North America, and it's kind of Enbridge to allow us to kind of pitch you on that concept. You can get there. Now, is everybody going to, let's be really clear, not everybody's going to buy a net zero ready home from you. What I'm saying to you is, you can be successful selling net zero ready homes if you have that 5-minute drill down pat. And so just keep that in mind as we move through this. And I always like to point out, in terms of expectations, and Andrew and Sarah, they understand, they think that warranties last forever. They think that comfort and lifestyle is going to be perfect. He loves to live all year round in those same shorts and t-shirts, and he expects the comfort to be exactly the same regardless. They're interested in investment quality. We have some demographic changes. You guys are actually, required to build now, or not required, you are building to such a wide variety of demographics. It's really pretty fascinating. And of course, we do need to be mindful of, they have access to a whole bunch of information. So that's something that we need to keep in mind. That's why it's actually pretty interesting. Because they have access to so much information, that's why they can buy a house on one visit. They can get educated just enough to be able to be ready to buy a house on one visit to you, as long as you respect the fact that they've already done a bunch of research, and as long as you can take that next step and help them understand the right process for buying a house. So that's kind of where we're at. And so I'm going to say to you, what we really want to think about is a defined sales process to help our clients make better decisions. So Steph, I'll ask you again, when you went to buy a new house, let's say, what did you think in your mind? What did you think was going to be the way you were going to look for a house?
Well, I figured I would walk in, talk to the sales representative, look at the different house plans on paper, maybe go walk through one if I could, talk about the different options that I had and how much they were and that sort of thing. So that's kind of what I expected.
Right. And is that the way it went?
Yeah, I think it kind of did. In the early part, it's been like 3 years, so going back in my memory, right. but yeah, I think it did. But actually, to your point about going online, I did that first. Looked at all the different floor plans that were available online to see which one seemed to fit with where I was kind of what I was thinking of in my head. And so it did help to kind of weed that process down as well early on, because I knew kind of going into it that I wasn't looking for something that was huge. I wasn't looking for something that was 2-story or a split. I knew kind of what I was looking for, and I could kind of get more specific more quickly.
Thank you. And my point here is that new home, so people buying a house think this is, I'm going to go in, going to wander the model home, grab some literature, talk to the sales agent, to some extent stay away from the sales agents because we have a little bit of angst over that. And so, but what I would say is, who's best qualified to help somebody buy a new house? And there's some real experts on this call who do this day in, day out. And hopefully they would agree with me that there is a defined sales process that we know works specifically if you want to help people make better buying decisions with respect to high performance houses. It starts with, of course, like anything, any other sales situation, a good meet and greet. Hey, how are you today? Isn't that beautiful weather, or isn't that lousy weather? What an interesting car you're driving. Hey, what a busy household this is. Meet the kids. Pretty much standard meet and greet. That's to break the ice, many would say. It's nothing to do with business, if you wanted the tip. Nothing to do with business. The key, when I do secret shopping, the key for me is the next step down. The best sales agents, the ones that have the highest closing ratios, actually end up with the highest customer satisfaction ratings and sell high performance houses more than anybody else. Do this. They set an agenda. They say something along the lines of, well, thanks very much for coming in. Here's what I suggest we try to accomplish today. As simple a phrase as that. Because it's your first visit, or because it's your third visit, or because you've been looking for 6 months, or because it's the first time you've ever looked at a new home, or you've tried resale and it didn't work for you. Because of that, you use whatever they gave you in the meet and greet, and you simply say, thank you very much for visiting. Here's what I suggest we accomplish today. And in fact, what is the right buying process for a high performance home? First, you would say to them, I'd like to ask you a few questions to understand a little bit about what would suit your needs. Second, I'd like to show a few things to you, things that define a difference between our houses and other houses, or between our houses and the house you're currently living in. So that's the demonstration. Third, I'm sure you'll have some questions of me. And fourth, hopefully by the end of this meeting, we can find a house that suits your needs. We're not going to say, I'm going to sell you a house, but you can allude to the fact that a decision's going to get made. Now, this is really, really important. All 5 of these steps, or 4 of these steps, are vitally important. You're going to say, well, I don't want to give them angst that they have to make a decision today. I don't want to pressure them. No, you're not pressuring them. You're getting the logical side of the brain active. Because here's what's happening. Right now, when they first walk in, the emotional side of the brain is on high alert. It's looking for countertops and cabinets. It's looking for bedrooms. It's looking for views. It's looking for window sizes. That's the emotional side. It's taken over the conversation. The logical side of the brain is, yeah, you go ahead, have fun. When it comes right down to it, I'm going to tell you whether we're going to buy this house today. And the logical side of the brain goes, we're not buying a house today. We're going to take this information. We're going to sort it out at the dining room table. I don't need to do anything. I'll just kind of wander around and be lazy. What you really want is to say this, when you say, hopefully today we can help you make a decision, immediately the logical side of the brain has to wake up and go, whoa, wait a minute, what's going on here? I got to listen to all of this? And the logical side of the brain, while you're then demonstrating the house, the logical side of the brain is going, oh, geez, I need to know about that, need to know about this. You've all had this experience. You do a great job. The emotional side of the brain has worked really well. You made a really good connection. And just when you think they're going to sign, all of a sudden they say, well, we'll have to think about it. And that, is the logical side of the brain going, we're out of here. I need a few minutes to come up with 4 reasons why we're not buying this house. That is the death, of course. Or I'll have to ask my friend, or I'll have to ask my wife or my husband, so on. What you're trying to do with that last statement, when you say to them, hopefully today we can find a house that suits your needs, you're putting the logical side of the brain on notice that something's going to happen at the end of the day. You don't necessarily have to buy a house, but you better be ready to have some reasons, some answers that you're looking for. So all 4 of these steps. First, I'd like to ask you some questions. And you're going to say, well, I often hear sales agents say to me, do you have any questions? That's not the way you want to do it. If they ask questions first, they're in control. You need to take gentle control of this sales process. That's why you would say to them, first, I'd like to ask you some questions. Then I'd like to show you some things. Then I'm sure you have some questions of me. So you're putting them again on notice. Of course, you're going to have time to ask me questions, but right now I'm going to ask you questions and make sure that you have what you need. Now, you might say, people don't want that. They want to just look at the model home and then come back. I'm okay with that. You can change this agenda. There's a second type. You can say this to folks. Well, here's what I suggest we may want to accomplish today. Why don't you guys go ahead and have a look at our model homes? Stefanie said you're interested in a bungalow. That's model number 3. Why don't you go down, have a look at the model? What I'll do, Stephanie, is I'll meet you out there. I'll have some information for you, and then I'd like to ask you some questions, show you a few things, and hopefully we can find a house. So there's no problem with releasing them. It's called, the technique is called tie a string to them. Stephanie, why don't you go and have a look at the model, and I'll meet you out there and we'll go over a few things that I think you're going to find really interesting. So there's a couple of ways, and if you're not committed to this, this is going to take you a little getting used to, because right now I'm going to say many salespeople think the customer's in control and should be in control. And what we're saying here is set an agenda that makes it really clear that at the very least we're sharing control over this situation. And generally speaking, most people, when you set this agenda, immediately relax and go, oh, finally, I've found somebody who knows what I'm up against. Because there's nothing more stressful than buying a new home, right? There's a lot going on. And to know that there's a professional who's standing arm in arm with them, side by side, working on this. In fact, when you ask questions, it's turned somewhat sideways. So it's not confrontational. We're working together to find the right solution for you. You're really trying to show them that we're on the same team. We're working to help you find the best house. Here's the reason I find this so fascinating. I still to this day, well, not during COVID, but up until COVID, I was secretly shopping new houses. And sales agents, the ones that don't particularly do a great job, I'll come in and they'll say, I have a few questions for you. Fair enough. How many bedrooms are you looking for? 3. I feel it's just kind of a silly question, because every builder in North America has somewhere between 2 and 5 bedrooms. Is that fair? You all sell somewhere between 2 and 5. And unless you're selling condos and they're down at 1 bedroom, why do we need to ask number of bedrooms? You've got bedrooms. Whatever they tell you in the end, you don't really need to ask that question. What you really want to ask is, tell me about the household. How many people are going to be joining you in this wonderful venture? They will tell you without having to ask number of bedrooms. They will tell you how many bedrooms you need. But imagine how much greater information you get, how much better information you get when you ask them, tell me about the household rather than number of bedrooms. Because the household question, they might say to you, well, there's just the 2 of us, but it's a young family. We're expecting a child. Wow, how exciting that is. That's amazing. Or it's just the 2 of us, but both of us, because of COVID, are now going to be working from home. We've decided we love working from home. So really, you don't need 3 bedrooms. You need 1 bedroom and 2 home offices. Okay, that's a totally different conversation. And if we can speak to that, rather than just asking bedrooms, ask about lifestyle. So the idea here is to commit to a sales process that works well. And the key line out of there is number 2, which is set an agenda. Here's what we'd like to accomplish today is kind of where we're at. That's a key element, or one of the key findings out of today's session for those who are interested. And when I say change that sales process, I'm going to match it up this way. Certainly high performance builders, you've changed the way you build. You have a much better respect for building science than you did 15, 20 years ago. You understand the house's system effects. You've all taken these training courses from Enbridge and CHBA on how to build high performance houses. You're now testing your houses to understand how they work and the performance of those. All of your folks have gone through better training. And you're on this path of continued improvement. I see all the great names on the screen. I know all of you, most of you, and you're all committed to this idea of we're going to be continue improving. And that's what we would say is we need to change the way we sell houses. And first and foremost, your salespeople need to be more knowledgeable. Those who are doing sales. In fact, I pose the question this way: who needs to know this better? The people who are building it or the people who are selling it? Steph, you want to pipe in? What are your thoughts?
Well, I would say both, actually.
Fair enough. I'm okay with both. I would say I'm okay with both. But here's what I'd ask you. Why do you think salespeople know this best? What's the challenge for salespeople that isn't necessarily present with people who are building it? What's the extra challenge that salespeople have?
Well, you have to work with quite an informed buyer, actually. They've done a lot of research, and you're having to convince someone that your product is better versus when you're building the house, you've already basically been contracted from that. So for that.
And I love what you said, and I'll just fine tune it a little bit. As
Sure.
one builder pointed out to me, they have access to more information, but it
Yes.
doesn't make them any smarter, because often they've had to sort through the 233,000 websites that actually said it wrong, or they watch the TV programs that have it all wrong. You know, we know those, right? So often they have information that's erroneous, irrelevant. And so you're right. We have to be more knowledgeable because our clients are more knowledgeable, and we don't have as much time. We know in construction, you can take half hour, 45 minutes to explain to one of your trade contractors why they need to flash a window correctly. In houses, in sales, we only have 3 to 5 minutes. So my words have to be so much better in sales than they do out on site. On site, I can demonstrate, show it, try it, and so on. Boy, in new home sales, we only have the best of us, best of you guys, 11 minutes, the worst of us, like me, 3 minutes in order to explain to people exactly what's going on. So your salespeople need to be more knowledgeable. Two, as you indicated, Steph, you are going to have to be respectful of the knowledge that your clients have, be able to sort through that, and there's some great questions you can ask to sort that one out. And it is going to take a little more time, not a lot more time. Remember, at most 11 minutes is your goal. 3 to 11 minutes is all you have. And really important to me is we need to demonstrate differences. We're going to have to understand how the human mind works and the power of demonstrating, not just saying we're a high performance builder, but actually demonstrating. And I'll show you a couple quick tips for that as we move through this, is where we want to get to. And then I said to you, one of the key goals throughout this process is to establish trust. And I'll give you the example. Again, my son bought a house on one visit to one builder, a very reputable builder. But frankly, my son didn't even really recognize the builder's name. When I said to him, why did you buy from X builder? Here's what they said to me. Because Tracy was really nice. She really seemed to know what she was doing. He did not buy from the builder who spends hundreds of thousands of dollars on marketing. He bought from Tracy, the salesperson. She established trust in very short order. Isn't that powerful? Your brand is frankly the people that are out on the sales floor. So we better make sure that they are working this trust angle, because that's ultimately who people are buying from. They buy from people they trust. And it turns out there's 3 in sales conversations. There's 3 recognized, well-researched ways to establish trust. One is to ask genuine questions of your clients. Genuine questions. Not how much money do you have, not how many bedrooms do you need. Genuine questions, which I'll come back to in a second. 2, associate yourself with trusted brands. Don't say, we've been in business 40 years, we're a trusted builder. No, find other ways. The CHBA Awards is a great example. Sonia, I'm really proud of what CHBA does. Our industry association has voted us a trusted builder. Our manufacturers and associate yourself with manufacturers. This is why you want to associate yourself with labels. I hear builders say all the time, I don't need some label program to tell people I build good houses. Actually, you do. It's exactly what you need. The power of labels. And you're going to say some homeowners don't need those labels. It's true. But on average, you take Energy Star, for example, 83% unaided brand recognition. The Energy Star, simple Energy Star logo, and it has brand recognition under 2 elements. 1, people who see it immediately go, oh, it must be more efficient. And 2, they say, oh, it also must be better quality. That's unaided when asked, when surveyed. Why? Because it's been around for so long. It's been around since 1993, the Energy Star label. So as good a builder as you may be, and I'm not discounting, and if you don't want to do labels, I'm okay with that. All I'm saying to you is marketing would say use the labels. They give you a leg up, if you will. And third, and this is very powerful, I want you guys to use it, is to let them experience. And I'll give you that in just a little second as to where we're headed with that. So 3 ways to build trust. 1, ask genuine questions. 2, associate with trusted brands or partners. And 3, let them experience the difference between your house and other houses. It's very powerful. So when we say ask genuine questions, showing interest in them. When I say genuine, showing genuine interest in them. What's prompted your search? Tell me about your family in your research so far, and things like, what have you heard? Not questions like, how many square feet are you looking for? How many bedrooms are you looking for? What price range are you in? No, what's prompted your search? And the very best, in all my secret shopping, I can tell you I've met 3 sales agents who did such a good job of questioning that they were able to have me falsely sign, I had to apologize afterwards, sign a deposit for a house without ever asking me the price range I was in, without ever having to ask. Why? Because they were able to ask questions in such a way that they knew what price range I was going to be comfortable with. And they just did an outstanding job. And it only took them overall from start to finish to the time I'm ready to sign a deal. In one case, 17 minutes because I time it. In the other case, 23 minutes. They'd actually taken me out to a home site, driven me out in 17 to 23 minutes, had me ready, had done everything they needed to do in order for me to make a buying decision. I think it's really powerful by asking genuine questions and getting people to chat. Now, you're going to absolutely tell me you've met clients who aren't interested in this, and you're right. This works like all other things. This works for about 75% of the population, 75% of new home buyers. There are others. You're going to say investors aren't interested in this. Oh, yes, they are. You're just not asking the right question. The first thing you need to find out is this an investor buying? And then I ask a different sets of questions, or at least maybe the same questions, but with a different ending to them. And we can find this out. 75% of buyers of anything, cars, pants, phones, houses, 75% respond really well to these genuine questions. 25% of the population, for any number of reasons, they're not bad people, don't get me wrong. They're just different in how they buy, or they're different in how they buy this particular product. Because you're going to say, I don't do this on every product I buy. You're right. But in houses, given the emotion versus the logic side and how complicated a new home buying is, 75% of the time, this kind of approach works and works well. And then you're going to say there's language barriers and culture barriers. Absolutely. So I'm not saying you do this and you can do this with every client, but in general, you'd work to say, I need to find a way to ask more questions. Why do I ask questions? Partly because I want to know the answers, partly because it builds trust. Let's be really clear. There's a human behavior to this. When you show interest in them, when you show you like them, the first element of trust is you actually have to like people before you can trust them. Well, how do I get people to like me? I like them first. Here's the science behind this, as short as I can say it. I love doing this in a full day session. We can work on it longer. But the comment or the process is this. If I show that I like you, you are predisposed to like me. And if you're predisposed to like me, you're predisposed to trust me. That's what you're trying to do with this asking questions. So ask questions that show you like people, that you're interested in them. Not questions that are of interest to you, but questions that are of interest to them that they would like to answer. You're going to say, I'm just trying to get information. No, you're not. You're trying to build trust with this one. You're trying to build trust. And then it's the trust by association. I mentioned labels before, or manufacturers. Owens Corning is a good partner of the Net Zero program. Enbridge is obviously a great partner. I should show them as well. My apologies for Enbridge for not having them on the screen. But by all means, use the Enbridge, use the Owens Corning, use the brands that people recognize. Why Owens Corning? Well, it's the Pink Panther. Who knew an insulation company would make, the Pink Panther so valuable? And so use the trusted brands if you're using them. And I'm not saying you have to use Owens Corning, don't get me wrong. But if you are using those brands, make sure you're using them as part of your whole presentation, if you will. So that's where we're having. And so we've done.
Can I jump in just for a
second?
second?
By all means.
Yeah. So on that point of trust, so I was fortunate when I bought with my builder. I happened to know the individual who was the sales rep, and so it was just always just an incredibly fantastic experience. But on the secret shopper thing, so I went, and this was about 3 hours away, so I'm not going to say where it was, but I did a secret shopper for a builder. And when I walked in the door, the sales agent didn't ask my name, first of all, and he asked me 2 questions. The first one was, what was my expectation on occupancy? And then he followed it up to say, because this site isn't ready for a couple of years. And then he asked, what is my price? Because these homes all start at whatever it was, 500,000 or 600,000. And so they came across as disqualifying questions, almost like he didn't even want to have a conversation with me unless I met his requirements. And so so he asked questions, but they weren't toned in such a way that it felt like I was valued at all. And so even in my own renovation business, what I had done was created a script of questions to kind of walk me through, walk the customer through, really kind of meeting their needs and kind of hearing them to attempt to build that trust. And it seemed to be very effective.
And thank you for that, Steph. I really appreciate that. We often hear this. You have to qualify people. No sense wasting their time. No sense wasting my time. All right. You're not willing to waste 3 minutes and make a good impression with people? Because if he'd asked that, if he'd not asked those 2 questions and simply asked a couple of questions of you to begin with, oh, tell me what's prompted your search for a new home. Well, it's just I got to move right away and I have to be here in the next month. Oh, that's wonderful that you're moving to the area. Sorry, we're not having it ready. He's now become a trusted advisor as opposed to somebody who's not interested in you by simply asking a different type of question. So we can still qualify people. We can still qualify people without being dismissive. Is really the point. So thank you for making that distinction. And as you say, in the renovation business, even more important, because you have to build even more trust in the renovation business because it's such an intimate process, right? Renovating somebody's house. So we better find out. In fact, I know renovators who would ask this would say this, because it's such an intimate relationship and we're going to get to know each other really well. First thing we should really do is find out if we are a good fit. If we'd have fun together working on your project, because I want you to have fun when you do it, and I'd like to have fun as well. So, and that's what a great way to start questioning, to say to people, I'm open, I'm interested, let's see if we're a good fit. I think that's a very nice approach. So let's assume we've done really good questioning. Now we'd hopefully find out what people are interested in, and from that we can start to match high performance features of our houses to the emotions that they've expressed. And if we use Stefanie as the example, and your son Alex at age 15, now 17, and you're thinking about long term, think about the kinds of things in terms of high performance that Stefanie might be interested in. And when we think about that, we think about, and most builders are pretty good, and salespeople are good at the features of the product. We use a fiberglass insulation, or we use a Lennox furnace, or we use a Delta basement drainage system, the physical characteristic. And so I do want you mentioning those, the characteristics, the fact, the property. Second, we're going to have to be able to back it up with the advantage of how that feature actually works. Why do I need you to do this? Remember, you're trying to build trust. You can't simply say to somebody, we use fiberglass insulation, therefore our house is really efficient. You're basically saying, trust me, fiberglass insulation is good. You're asking them to trust you already. I need you to be building trust, not asking for trust. I always talk about the trust well. I'm either dipping into the trust well or I'm filling up the trust well. As long as possible, you'd like to fill it up, because the moment you really want to use the trust well is when they go to sign the check. And you want that well to be as deep as possible so they don't mind taking a bit of water out of there to sign that deal. So you always have to be ready. Every sales agent has to be ready to be able to give the physical characteristic, the fact, the property, tell people how it works. This is the demonstration, and then not miss out on the benefit, to make the connection. I can't simply say I use fiberglass insulation, it has a 30% higher R value, and go, we're good. No, I need to turn that into a benefit, something that, and the key phrase there, how it improves their lives. You remember, Stefanie said the first thing she had to find out was she had to find a house that would improve her life, that would allow her and her son to live in harmony nicely over the next 30 years. She's looking to improve or upgrade her life. How would the product you're going to try to sell them or put in your houses, how is it going to help improve their lives? Or what problem will it solve for them? That's always the challenge. Every product, and it won't be every product, but the products you use in your houses is to make that leap between the feature, the advantage, and the benefit of how it'll improve, not your life, not in general people's lives, but, and sometimes you're guessing a little bit. I think Stefanie would be interested in this. You could start to imagine every product you have, in fact, has dozens of benefits, and we're going to chat about that as we go through this. And so I would say to you, other than energy savings, because I want to remind you, energy savings would be intuitively on what side of the brain. Well, it would be on the logical side of the brain. I want to try and find as many benefits as possible that are on the emotional side of the brain. And some of you, some of you will know that I've been in classes with me, and I don't want to use the same old examples, but I hear this every day of people that would tell me the benefits that they're looking for, the reason they bought houses. So I'll mention a few of them, and hopefully people aren't annoyed and maybe haven't heard them before. But it's really, I want you to imagine this. My dad said to me when I started in sales, I said, I don't want to push people, be pushy. He said, no, on the contrary, you want to help customers make the right choices. And I said, well, then I hate asking for the sale. He goes, no, then you're wasting their time. You're not helping them at all. Let's be really clear. If you don't sell them a house today, what have you doomed them to do? You've doomed them to spend another 3 weekends researching and driving around and having angst. The sooner they make a decision with you, assuming they're the right customer and you truly can help them, you've actually improved their lives, because you've gone, you can relax. You can go enjoy Christmas now because you've made that housing decision. How relaxing could that be? You're not being helpful unless you help people make good decisions. You would say, well, it's really up to them whether they want to do a net zero house or not. They're not qualified to determine whether they want to do a net zero house. You're the one who's qualified to go, geez, based on what Stefanie's telling me, she's going to live in this house for the next 20 years. She may be by herself by that point because Alex's going to move on. So I would need to make sure I find a good decision, the right choices for Stefanie. And it turns out the right choice for Stefanie is indeed a net zero ready house for any number of reasons that we can find. So it's about helping people make good choices. This is where we're at. And as you know, there are lots of choices and alternatives and options, triple glazed windows. I'll go through a couple of these just as a little example of, and not that you're necessarily using insulated sheathing. I wasn't asked to use any particular product in this. I just picked a couple of simple ones, but I want to go through this. One of the things I always like to, point out is I always hear builders, for 35 years, I've heard builders say, you don't want to build them too tight. Don't want to build them too tight. Well, yesterday I was down in Denver, Colorado at our CI Live facility, and there was 22 builders there. Some of the largest builders in the United States were there, and some of the nicest, best custom home builders that I know were there. And oddly enough, there was a homeowner there, a guy who's about 45 years old. He's a doctor. He's having a house built. And I said, why are you here? He says, I'm having a house built in Kansas City. I said, really? I said, how'd you find us? I was online, I was looking. He said, this is going to be my forever home, my wife and kids. I want to make sure I'm making good decisions. I figured 2 days learning building science. I'm good with that. So the homeowner was there. So over the 2 days, we get to ask him what his expectations are. And of course, this is the United States, so they're doing airtightness testing of houses like we should be, but they are, we're not. And I was asking builders about, so what do you think about airtightness? And of course, some of them in the room were saying, well, I just worry we're making houses too tight. So I simply turned to doctor, his name's Quinn, Dr. Quinn, and I said, Doc, exactly how many holes would you like your builder to leave in the walls or attics of your house? And he said, none. Of course, none. And a little later on during the day, we got to be a bit of a shtick. I said to him, and they're talking about insulated sheathing and energy, and we were looking at thermographic pictures and so on. And I turned to him and I said, you're a rich guy. Obviously, I was joking, but he is a rich guy. I said, you don't care about wasting a little bit of energy? He goes, you kidding me? I've been doing my research. I want this Passivos thing, even though that's a German thing. I want this Passivos thing. I don't want to lose any energy. And to me, of course, Bert and others on this call will recognize I've been doing HRVs for a long time, and builders still have angst over it. You can imagine down in the southern U.S., they don't know what an HRV or an ERV is. They think it's just a cost. They're like, why would we need these? This isn't code. And I simply turned to Dr. Quinn, and I said, Doc, exactly when would you want fresh air in your home? And his answer was, all the time. Every homeowner I've ever asked that question. All the time. So sometimes we think it's a cost, and I don't know if we can put this one in, but I want you in this conversation, in today's conversation, I want you to think about what's going through a buyer's mind. And as long as we ask the question correctly, or more importantly, present it correctly, we don't want to tell people we're putting in an HRV. They don't know what that is. Heck, my brothers, I have 4 brothers, to this day, only one of them really knows what I do. They said, what are those HIV things you sell? They have no clue as to what I've been doing for 40 years. And finally, we built a new cottage for the family and the three brothers involved. They're like, boy, I really love that fresh air system. And they finally realized it's a fresh air system for the family. So make sure we're talking in ways that they can understand. You're not going to ask them, would you like an HRV in your home? You're going to ask them, when would you like fresh air in your home? These are the kinds of things that I want to get across. And it turns out the elegance of high performance houses are such that the same things that make houses more efficient also simultaneously make them more durable, healthier, quieter, controllable, comfortable. If energy savings is on the logical side of the brain, are any of these on the emotional side of the brain? Is? Of course they all are. A more durable house during storms, let's think about resiliency, think wildfires. You should have no problem if you're out west right now selling high performance houses on wood smoke alone, because your house is more resilient, more durable during those times. Healthier houses in flood zones and so on. Quieter houses, more comfortable, controllable. Lots and lots of consumer benefits that we want to talk about. And as I mentioned, the two sides of the brain, the logical left, the emotional right. The right hand side of the brain buys everything. It's the left hand side of the brain that has the veto rights, who will say, yeah, I'm not hearing what I need to hear. Nobody's really explained this to me well enough. You've got the emotional side sold, then you need to give the logical facts. So let me help you with a couple of examples of this. When surveyed, Sonia, I think this might have been Suzanne Shelton who did this study, maybe not for CHBA, but Suzanne Shelton, who's a marketing guru on energy efficiency, she takes the pulse, and she calls it energy pulse. And 59% of people said they would buy energy efficiency because it would save them money. And the interesting part is, but they seldom do. They say they're going to, and then they don't. Why? Because they already think their current house is energy efficient. The survey shows anything built after 1990, people think their house is as efficient as they can possibly get. It's interesting. You ask them, how old's your house? Oh, it was built in 92. Is it efficient? Oh, yeah, it's really efficient. It has a high efficiency furnace. Yeah, it's probably as good as it can get. And you're going to see here in a second that's by no means true. Second, they don't believe the savings claims. Why? They haven't experienced them. They don't know how to experience them. They've heard them too many times before. They don't even know what you're talking about, which is a big part, HRVs, R values, and so on. But here's the most important one. They don't buy energy efficiency because they're busy buying things that will improve their lives. Stefanie said it to you right off the bat. Yes, in the background, she wants net zero. But in the foreground, she needs to find a house that meets her needs. And then we tie into, how could I use net zero in this case? I keep using net zero as the example. Why? Because you're all going to be there in a few years anyway. So I figure I got to get you there sooner rather than later. But then we need to find things that will improve their lives. And Steph, I'm going to challenge you to think about elements of your house now that you go, wow, did that ever improve versus the rental house you had? But give me a second just before I ask you that one. And just as an example, I wanted to answer that one that says they think their house is already efficient. Remember that one? Just look at this. By code, well, partly by code and partly by other changes, houses built in the 1990s are twice as efficient as houses built in the 70s. Houses built today are twice as efficient as houses built in 1990. Isn't that amazing? That's minimum code. Minimum code are twice as good as houses built in the 90s. And by 2030, you'll all be building houses that are twice as good again. Isn't that amazing progress? If the car industry had done that, man, we'd be at cars that were 70, 80 miles per gallon. It's really pretty amazing what we've done. And so I don't want us to lose that when we're talking to clients. The bad news is we can't just say our houses are twice as efficient because they're going, how can I trust you? I don't know. That's what we need to think about. How am I going to demonstrate these benefits? And there's a little example of the history. We went from R12 walls to R20 walls to now R24 walls, 22 or 24. Some are even using spray foam. Unfortunately, though, the actual technical side of this, the effective R value, hasn't gone up by as much. It's still gone up nicely. Walls are more efficient than they used to be, but effective R values, this is the technical side of the conversation. But when we can explain to a homeowner that it's a really simple piece of math. If I double the R value of a wall, I cut the energy use or energy waste in half. That's not such a difficult thing to say to folks. Don't just tell them R20. Here's what you would say. Oh, your house was built in 1970? Oh, that would be a 2x4 wall with R12. Our walls have R22. Simple math would say we have twice the amount of insulation, which means we've cut the heat flow in half. Don't say R22 unless you're willing to say, and that means we've cut the heat flow in half. We need to find a way to demonstrate that. Is where I won't do that one, but I won't do that one. Sorry, my apologies. So when we get right down to it, the benefits of better walls, and Stefanie, I will put you on the spot because, of course, you have a net zero. If I said to you, you have more insulation in your walls, what benefit would you say you were most interested in? Or let's put it this way, what would you say you've benefited most from that?
Okay, well, to compare it to where I was in the rental, I found that in the wintertime, the house was freezing. And in the summertime, the house was boiling hot. And so what I've noticed by moving into my net zero ready home is that no matter where I am in the house, now it's bungalow, keep in mind, with a full basement, I can be at the south side of the house or the north side of the house. The south side has big windows. I can be in the basement. I could be in the left or the right side. Every single room feels the same, including in the basement. And I've never experienced that before.
Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to get to even be more personal.
Okay.
When you say the house was freezing, I saw you cringe. When you say
Yeah.
freezing, give me like what happened when it was freezing. What'd you have to do because it was freezing?
I would really have to layer up. So I'd put lots of clothes on, or I'd like take a hot shower to just kind of warm my body temperature up. Wear socks, shoes, even just incredibly uncomfortable, to the point, like, and in fact, this was kind of an interesting thing that I had never experienced before. But in the summertime, there was no air conditioning, granted, in the rental, but in the summertime, it was so hot and the humidity level was so high that it actually affected my ability to function and my motivation levels. It actually altered my quality of life because it was so incredibly uncomfortable.
And you started to take on your old Louisiana accent? Just blazing around in the hot.
Almost Tennessee, but yes, yeah.
Tennessee, not a girl. And you see me trying to get a little bit personal here with Stefanie, and she and I hadn't talked about it. But that's what I want you to think about. I don't want you to say the house is going to be more comfortable. I don't want you to say that. I want you to actually see that cringe on her face when she said, it was freezing in there. Now you know you've got the emotional side of the brain. That's the kind of emotion. When you say benefits, I want you to be able to invoke. I can give you my story. To watch TV in the basement of our old house, you had to wear oven mitts and a toque, right? That it was the funniest thing. Linda would wander downstairs. She'd have big slippers on and oven mitts on because it was so freezing. I said, let's watch TV downstairs. It's a bigger screen. Ooh, heat going down there. So I want you to imagine in your questioning, tell me about your current home. That's what we would have said to Steph. Tell me about your current living. Well, it's just a rental, but it's freezing in there. And the minute I see her do that, then I know I can talk about insulation to this woman. That's what this is about, is trying to evoke the emotion. And you see it here, the no hidden problems, the peace of mind. I've had people say, I bought a high-performance house because my last house, a lot of mice and a lot of bugs. And I didn't want that anymore. There's nothing worse. So always, I'll just read a few of these. Healthier, less dust, less mold. We were chatting, as I say, just the other day about wildfires and how my partner, Justin, in Colorado, they were affected by the fires, the winds coming across the mountains. And he said he had friends and family coming to stay at his place because he has an airtight house, proper ventilation, and they weren't impacted by the wood smoke. He had family members who said, could I stay with you for a couple of weeks? Because I just can't live in my home because it's leaky and all the wildfire smoke is just smelling up the house. So lots and lots of opportunities for us to chat about that. I like to use windows as well as an example. Why? Because windows are such a big part of our emotion around, I love those windows, and the fact that windows are so good from an energy perspective and so bad from an energy perspective. We have to find a way to manage that. And when we think about high performance windows with triple glaze and low E coatings and insulated spacers, the performance of those windows. But what I want us to do is be able to present this. And it just as a little example of this, is hopefully you can see me on the screen. Never ever again from this day forward, never say we use triple glaze windows. It's a wasted piece of breath. People don't know what you're speaking about. They don't understand it. They may, but generally speaking, they don't. I want you to take an extra 22 seconds and say it this way. I want you to say, we use not 2 panes of glass, but 3. I mean, better yet, have a glass section with you. But at the very least, we use not 2 panes of glass, but 3, which means we have not 1 airspace, but 2. And then you're able to say, which means we've doubled the performance of our windows. If you just say triple glazed windows are twice as good, people go, well, how do they know that? That doesn't make any sense. How would that be true? The left logical side of the brain is going, how can they say that? I'd have to see the data on that. But when you present it this way, not 2 panes of glass, but 3, not 1 airspace, but 2, and then when you say it's double the performance, people go, oh, yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah, I can see that. And so imagining presenting in a way that's helping, remember, the logical side of the brain come to a decision, see them nodding, going, oh. And then in addition to that, we use a silver coating and so on. But looking for simple ways to help the logical side of the brain come to the same conclusion that the emotional side of the brain is at. The emotional side of the brain is, I love these windows. The logical side of the brain is going, I don't know if that's going to be a problem. But allowing the logical side of the brain to go to the emotional side, yeah, that's a good idea. Big windows are a good idea because they're using not 2 panes of glass, but 3. Always finding that way. I'll go back to the insulation just for a second. Some of you have seen me do this. Here's your assignment. If you haven't done this, tomorrow, go find a 1-inch or 2-inch piece of insulated sheathing. Put it on your desk. Steph, I've made you do this one. It's not bad. Susie, I know, has done this one. Put your hand on your desk, put your hand on the styrofoam, count to 3, and determine which one is warmer. I've seen homeowners go crazy over this one. They're at the same temperature. Both of them are at 21 degrees. They're in the room. But this one, the one with the foam feels warmer. And when you say to them, it makes our houses 30% warmer, their hand is going, oh yeah, it does. I can feel it. So allow them to experience the difference. Remember I said earlier, demonstrate the difference to build the trust. Carefully plan your demonstrations is what you're looking for. So
Gord,
yes, go ahead.
yeah. So on that point, what I found, because I was implementing these sort of concepts when I would do my renovations, I would say, and I'd walk into a home and I'm like, this, to me, the home was not very comfortable. And I would ask, so how do you feel about the comfort of your home? Oh yeah, it's comfortable. Right. And I'm thinking to myself, it's not. And so sometimes people, I think, don't know what comfort is.
They don't know what it is.
And so I often will talk with builders and I describe living in my net zero ready home as kind of like heated seats in your car. I didn't think I needed them until I experienced them. And then the minute I experience them, I can't live without them. So it's now moved up as a priority, right? Because of that.
I love that. The emotional benefits, the windows, halfway down, no icky black stuff on the sills, no condensation, not having to wipe those up. I was with a woman, she's a plant enthusiast, had over 300 plants. I said, wouldn't it be nice to know you could have 300 plants and not have the windows dripping? She goes, oh, that would be great. And she immediately went and got a quote on triple glazed windows. And she called me back and said, every window guy tells me it's not worth it. You don't need it. She goes, I'm trying to tell them I could care less about the savings. I just want to be able to grow my plants without having icky black stuff on the windows. So always looking for that emotional side of this. Logically, this is something called an ERV, whatever that is. And I know the guy who invented the term, Rick Olmsted, my old mentor who recently passed away, heat recovery ventilator. He thought he'd found the perfect term, then morphed it into ERV. And I had to remind him, Rick, we've stopped using that term. Here's what they use in the US. They call it a fresh air machine. Isn't that better? A fresh air machine or a whole house fresh air system is what Sam Rashkin at Department of Energy would say. You have a much better time selling it. Help people. You're using the words that invokes what it does for people. Not what it does for the industry, what it does for homeowners. It gives you fresh air. Dr. Quinn wanted fresh air. He doesn't want an HRV or an ERV. He wants a whole house fresh air system. Help with those kinds of decisions. That's what we want to get to. I'll just finish up here. It's about matching the features to their emotional needs. How many? 3 to 4 ways to save. Remember, the logical side of the brain is thinking I need 3 or 4 conversations. So if I'm going to do energy savings, I'm going to have to show 3 or 4 ways. You can't just say this house is going to save you money. You'd have to say it's going to save you money because of this, 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 and this. And Stefanie, in your house, it saved you both winter and it saved you summer. Fair enough?
Yeah.
And it's about those presentations, choreographed with enthusiasm, linked to their needs, and opportunity for people to experience it. Have them open the door. Have them touch the button if you don't want them to go downstairs. Have them touch the button where the HRV is and say, when you click that button, your house gets fresh air. Go ahead and touch that button. Now you're getting fresh air. Oh, that's cool. I can get fresh air whenever I want it? Yes, exactly. And it's because of this, it's called cognitive dissonance. It's a human behavior. It's the mind is interested in what the body is doing. So if you can get them holding the tape measure in renovation or experiencing countertops and so on, it's the reason why countertops sell so well. Because you guys know this, sales agents know this. You got to clean every countertop every weekend. Well, now in COVID, you got to clean it every 3 hours because everybody wants to touch this stuff. The body wants to touch, wants to experience. Allow them to touch, allow them to experience, demonstrate that performance, and then tie it to the emotion of why that would be so useful to them. Sonia, I said I stole a couple of slides. I just love the premise of trying to match people's needs. We're looking to downsize into comfortable home, nice community, willing to pay higher dollar per square foot because it's quality. Quality construction is the comfort, and comfort is the key. I've been around a long time with poorly built homes and home maintenance, not know how I'm looking to spend in retirement. Question is, there's the key. Question is, how do I know if I'm getting a quality built home? So even a gentleman like this, who's been around the block, lived in many houses, can't figure out how he finds quality. Very powerful. Here is an interesting one. Finally, a label that I can trust to tell me this is a quality constructed home. Isn't that powerful? That he has this angst over quality, and you're able to provide that is really a middle, halfway down. This gives me peace of mind, knowing the home will be comfortable year-round. Paying little to nothing for electricity is icing on the cake. These are really nice ways, this clear demonstration of what was important to this gentleman, to this family, is to understand and then tie into that emotion as you're finishing up. And it's about helping them make a good decision. It's about, did we find out their needs and wants? Did we let them experience the values that were important to them? Did we address any concerns? Remember our agenda? And then, is there any reason not to go ahead today? That's how you would imagine this going. If I did the agenda, as we talked about, I asked them some questions, I showed them some stuff, I addressed their questions, why wouldn't I go ahead and just help them make a buying decision today? Very, very powerful. Of course, there's going to be some yeah buts. What about? And it turns out there's a process for that too. And the process starts with, thank you very much. Really appreciate you bringing that up. Could you just clarify that for me? Why? Because I want to hear them talk. Why do I want to hear them talk? Because it builds trust. When they talk, it builds trust. This is just human behavior. Find a way to agree with them. Oh, I used to think that too. I didn't understand that more insulation was actually would save me money. Find some way to agree with them, and then explain. And here's a key word: your choices. How come you guys don't use whatever? We've chosen to use this product. Chosen is an important word in sales. It shows that it's thoughtful. It wasn't just for low price. It was a thoughtful reason you had for why you made the decision you made to use that product. Salespeople should be using that. Here's what we've chosen to put in our houses compared to other builders. And then you are going to have to offer proof. The demonstration, feel this, touch that, turn that on, smell this. If you want to go there, go ahead. That's what we want to get to. And then ask them for acknowledgement. Did that answer your question? And the key out of this, and then as I mentioned, is proof, right? The demonstrating the features, using energy modeling to optimize performance, and the site testing that you as builders are doing under programs like Energy Star and LEED and Net Zero. That use that testing and verification, the third party folks, and the permanent registration, the labeling of your homes is so powerful in order to provide proof to your clients. And always use dollars. I always talk too much, sorry, but always, if you're going to talk energy savings, Susie and I have discussed this at length. If you're going to use energy savings, you don't need to, but if you're going to use it, save it to the end. It becomes a logical reasons to make an emotional decision. Do not sell net zero houses on energy savings. Sell them on the emotional benefits. It's not freezing and it's not boiling hot. But in the end, Stefanie, would you agree? Do you like your bills?
Yes. Well, actually, let me clarify. Don't love bills, but I don't mind them. They're tolerable.
Right. And so that's what we want to get to. I'll just finish up by saying, if you think about high performance, most of you on this call are on this amazing path towards net zero construction by the year, 2030, 2032. What you need to be able to say to your clients with confidence. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. Why wouldn't you go ahead and do it now? Soon, all builders will be doing this. We've chosen to do it early because someday all builders are going to do this. It's the next logical step. Here's a nice one I think you're going to find some people are interested in. You need to know this. This is the culmination of 40 years of Canadian building science. I've had the great pleasure of meeting Harold Orr, who was essentially the inventor of the blower door in 1973. And I showed him the net zero program, and I showed him the aero barrier, which you guys will know I'm interested in and have a vested interest in. And I showed him this, and there's Harold at age 85 went, yes, finally, in my lifetime, we're going to get there. I said, what are you talking about? He said, we knew back in 1976 that we needed all houses to be around 1.5. That was the sweet spot. That's where we want to be. Really nice to know in my lifetime that all builders are going to get there. Harold was given the Order of Canada. He had an article written in Canadian Geographic, and he was given the Order of Canada for his contribution to Canadian housing. I think that's a story you can tell, that you're building houses that were envisioned by the leaders of this back in the 70s. It's kind of a cool story. So to finish up, as I said, the same things that make houses more energy efficient also make them healthier, durable, more comfortable, quieter, controllable, lots and lots of benefits. Focus on those emotional benefits. Find out what the benefits are by asking questions and sell based on those benefits. Identify the differences you have in your houses. Establish trust, one, by asking more questions, and then two, educate 90 seconds at a time. Show 4 or 5 items, 90 seconds at a time. In 7 minutes, you could help people understand this is the best house for me. Not necessarily because it's going to save money, but it's going to improve the life of my household, of my family, in the same way that Steph improved the lifestyle for she and her son. Always work on the emotion first, logic second, and allow people to touch. And I'll just say again, who needs to know this better? Well, it's the sales agents. Sales agents need to know this better, and you need to practice, train, and practice. I'm going to say this to you. Bob Schultz, leading sales trainer, would say you're practicing this 7 times before you're allowed on the sales floor. 7 times. That's what it takes to get this right. So we have a few minutes for questions. My apologies. I always get overexcited and want to talk too much. But any questions?
Well, there was actually more, just a couple of comments with regards to the labeling. And so you'd mentioned about aligning yourself with trusted brands. And so Zoran had mentioned, what about HERS, the Home Energy Rating System, or even the Building Knowledge's own Home 360?
Sure, and thank you for that. Any one of those labels works. All I would say to you, if you're employing a marketing firm, just put those labels out in front of people and see what they say. And what you're going to find is Energy Star, 83% brand recognition. The HERS rating is fairly well known in the U.S., not to consumers, but to builders and trade contractors. But the nice part about the HERS is it has a scale to it, and people get in sort of intuitively look and go, oh, I see, it's getting better and better. They have a little trouble when they try to explain, when homeowners are asked to explain the HERS scale. I can say this with some authority because Department of Energy and EPA have done surveys on these. Suzanne Shelton's done surveys on these, and they would say that the most recognized brand is Energy Star. It's the easiest one to get across. HERS takes a little more work to get it across, and even Sonia will know that the net zero concept, my own brother, so I said it's a net zero, our cottage is going to be net zero. So is that like tied to the internet? How does that do? Like it's zero bills for the, he didn't understand net zero energy. So it was deemed to be the best of a difficult conversation. So use a brand by all means, and then be ready to explain it in why you chose that brand. Let me say it that way. Why did you choose this label? Tell a story. If I could give you one final thing, when I was getting into sales, I said to my dad, who was a longtime sales guy, a chemical engineer, who was a very good sales guy, I said, how do you do sales? He says, tell your story. That's what it's about. Tell your story of how you've been able to help your customers make better decisions. That's what this is about. Tell your story of how you were able to build houses for a variety of people. Be ready to tell your story and how you've been able to help people improve their lives. And if the labels help you do that, go for it.
Well, that is a great way to end. And, we are actually at the end, and this is the end of
There you go. Yeah.
2:29. You wrapped it right up perfectly. So, of course, thank you so much, Gord, for this. It was really great to hear that, and just coming back to that. Basically, it's being authentic, really, and building that relationship with people. Because people
actually, I will say, Steph, I see names on this call that are way better at this than me in practice. I mean, I get to talk about this. I get to experience them doing it. There's some really good people on this call. Phil does a wonderful job at Chatsworth. Obviously, Susie from Doug Terry's and so on. Trent's there as well from Terry. You guys are doing an amazing job. So thank you for being on the call, just to reinforce that these are good concepts.
So thank you, Gord. And of course, thank you to Enbridge for their continued sponsorship and investment really in the education of our industry. They really do a great job of supporting everybody in that way. So thank you to them. And this rounds out the 2021 webinar series. And so we will be announcing at some point in time in the future the series for 2022. The idea is it'll be once a month, just like this one was, and we're going to try to keep it to around the same days, like on Thursdays in the afternoon. That's the plan. And so just kind of keep the lookout for that announcement. And so
Enbridge is good this way. Can we ask people to give us feedback if there's topics they would like to hear, other speakers? We have the ability. It's not just building knowledge. Obviously, we have the ability to bring other speakers in if people had ideas who they wanted to hear from.
So I didn't tell you this, but on the surveys that I send out, I do actually ask those questions. And so I'm going through the surveys over the last 12 months, and I'm going to and I'll be announcing those titles basically from people's feedback. So thank you for asking that question. Okay, thank you, everybody. I hope you have a great afternoon and happy holidays, and we'll see you in the new year. Bye.
Thanks, folks.